Our third speaker in this first session this morning is none other than Scientia Professor Veena Sajwala, Director of the University of New South Wales Centre for Sustainable Materials Research and Technology. I know she's well known to you all because she's one of Australia's top engineers and best known scientists as the inventor of green steelmaking technology, which has now been commercialised around the world. Veena is Associate Dean of Strategic and Industry Relations and Director of the Centre for Sustainable Materials Research Research and Technology at the University of New South Wales School of Materials Science and Engineering. Veena has won numerous awards and attracted many millions of dollars in research grants and works tirelessly to challenge stereotypes about scientists as just being men in white coats. In 2014, Veena was awarded a prestigious Australian Research Council Georgina Sweet Laureate Fellowship to pursue her groundbreaking research as well as to promote women in science. This year, she launched the Science 50/50 program to encourage girls to pursue careers in science and technology. Please welcome Veena Sajwala.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction, Kim. I guess from my point of view, it's absolutely fascinating. It doesn't happen too often at various conferences and events that I speak at where I actually have so many women in the room. So this is just incredible. So it probably just says a little bit to the kind of audiences that, of course, in the so-called sort of traditional industry that I work within in the area of I guess, manufacturing, sciences, and engineering. I do want to, of course, start a little bit in terms of my own journey going back, and I'll let you sort of stare at that slide for a little bit. Growing up in Mumbai, in India, where, of course, piles of trash, literally as big as that, were pretty commonplace. I think for a kid it was nothing short of Disneyland because it was sort of like a new thing emerged every day. And I guess it was also that fascination with, what exactly was it? And where did all these things come from and where do they end up going? So the nice thing about growing up in a place like Mumbai was, you actually got to get in there and play with some of these fascinating objects that, of course, even though they might seem on surface as trash, there is, of course, inherently a lot of value locked in these types of materials. If you have figured out what you're staring at, yes, it is a stockpile of tires. And of course, from our point of view, I wanted to, of course, straight up front acknowledge the fact that if it weren't for the fact that we've had such incredibly supportive industry partners here in Australia, we would never be able to sit and say that, yes, we can indeed now transform a whole stockpile of these types of materials across the world and use that in the process of making steel. And I want to particularly acknowledge our industry partner, One Steel, and Kat sitting here in the audience today, who is such an inspiration and a role model for me, as someone who is able to actually make things happen on the ground in the real world, is quite a challenge. But to watch her in action is absolutely impressive. But that's exactly what everyone has talked about, is having incredibly amazing role models for women. And certainly that is something that has shaped and influenced my career choices. So apart from the fact that it was the fascination of looking at what was beneath these types of waste materials, we actually went on and started to explore, well, what do we actually do? I don't know if some of you walking past might have actually paid attention to the library tower. And no, I do want to assure our Dean and our Vice Chancellor and everyone here that, no, you don't have to worry about this happening here because of the fact that all of these 2 million tires, and that's what we're talking about, in excess of 2 million tires, have indeed been transformed into a raw material resource in the process of making steel right here in Australia. And all credit, of course, again, to One Steel, who actually enjoyed the fact that science could well lead to this outcome. When we started the journey, this was never something that we would have ever imagined that we could have achieved. But I think, again, it was the fact that these people, both in industry as well as our collaborators within the university, and of course our students, who were passionate and firm believers that this could be achieved. It could have led to a lot of disasters too, but luckily we've got people like Kath who know how to control things and processes in the real industrial world. There are a whole range of possibilities, and of course the list goes on and on. We certainly are in a position very privileged that this type of research at the absolute cutting edge is supported through the Australian Research Council, but also the belief that industry has that certainly if we are to impact the world in the context of developing technologies that are environmentally sustainable, but also equally socially responsible, we have to look at things that are different to business as usual. We can't keep going on and on in looking at how traditional businesses have tapped into conventional resources, because if we are to affect climate change, if we are to make a real difference, then we have to be able to develop solutions that are truly able to absorb these types of problematic things, and indeed whether it's tires or waste materials like that. And you might say, well, where's the connection between utilizing a lot of these types of materials and manufacturing processes? The answer is very simple. You actually save significant levels of energy, because we do consume a lot of energy in producing all the things that we see around us that we take for granted, whether it's making steel or whether it's making a whole range of other products. It doesn't matter. It chews up significant quantities of energy. To put some numbers into context, in the process of making these types of materials, and indeed alloys that are not only expensive, we actually use up a lot of energy. The fact that the technology green steel making at One Steel has actually saved in the vicinity of about 10 to 20 kilowatt hours per ton means you can do the math, and you can see the significant levels of energy savings that we can achieve through developing these types of technologies. Just a quick picture here of what things look like at high temperatures. So when we are actually transforming waste materials, on the left-hand side is a combination of glass and plastics. At high temperatures of 1550, we've actually transformed those into these types of alloys, where effectively glass that is nothing but an oxide of silicon has now been transformed into an alloy that contains silicon. So traditional processes would require us to take temperatures up to 15 and 100 degrees Celsius and beyond. But enough about what we have achieved in the past. We have, of course, transformed these materials, but I do want to acknowledge the significant role that people have played all throughout, and in particular, of course, some of the people here at One Steel, and I think you'll probably notice the guy standing in the middle there, Paul O'Kane, who's played an important role, along with people like Kath, in inspiring young people. So in fact, you can see a lot of women out there who absolutely get impressed and inspired and get excited. I mean, how could you actually not get excited when you are surrounded by positive and passionate people who love what they do, but equally importantly, love to share the joys of science? For us, it's the same thing in the labs as well, where there are people from all over the world who come to UNSW because it's a fact that they want to make a difference to the environment, and whatever it is that has motivated back home. But certainly one thing's for sure, that they've been excited about the fact that science has left such a huge mark on them as they were kids, and they want to do so much more with it. But I guess the future lies certainly in terms of us addressing the social elements around what waste resources has actually done to our planet, and of course, equally importantly, a lot of the social challenges attached to it. Different parts of the world, including, of course, in many developing parts of the world, where dealing with these types of e-waste materials can be, of course, quite a severe outcome for the country in terms of the pollution and, of course, what it does to people's health, because I don't need to tell you, when you look at images like that, the negative impacts that these has. So what we want to try and do is get to the point where we are indeed able to transform these materials into high-value materials, but do it in a way that is socially responsible and it is safe and equitable. And why we can actually achieve that is because the strategies that we are developing are all around creating micro-recycling technologies that will enable countries and developing regions to be able to do all of this transformation in micro factories of the future. So we do believe that the future is where we can take a lot of these end-of-life products, transform them into high value, but do it in a safe, affordable manner in micro factories. I guess just to take a couple of seconds to touch upon the 50/50 program, we've had enormous success, and again I want to acknowledge various partners, including the Australian Museum, One Steel, Cochlear and so on, who are here today, who've played such an enormous role in being generous with their support and the time that their scientists who give up to be part of this program. We've had a whole range of young high school students coming through and getting excited and getting to meet a lot of passionate women who actually love what they do, but equally importantly, love talking about their stories and their life journeys. I do want to, of course, thank the Australian Research Council for this tremendous privilege to of course, have the Laureate Fellowship, but also to have the opportunity to run the 50/50 program, which is part of the Laureate Fellowship, and would like to acknowledge the support, again, that has come through from our dean. You can see it's a brave dean who fronts up, a whole bunch of young women at our launch, which we did earlier this year, and answers questions, but it was so invigorating. It was exciting to see 200 plus young girls from high schools coming along and participating in the launch earlier this year, and the journey continues. So I just want to leave you with one parting thought, that the Science 50/50 program is really all about all of us inspiring young women and other young people with our stories. And so if we can actually talk about our stories, the kinds of stories we've heard this morning, and share those stories with a lot of young women, we will certainly achieve the change that we all aspire to achieve. And I'd wish to thank our Dean for this opportunity and for hosting this symposium today. Thank you very much.